Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to .NET Productivity and Visual Studio for Windows and Visual Studio for Mac. My name is Mika Dumont. I'm a program manager on .NET and Visual
I'm
Studio.
Cody Meyer, Program Manager on the Visual Studio for Mac team here at Microsoft.
And we have tons of productivity features to show you. We're super excited. At least I'm excited. Cody, are you
I'm very
excited?
excited because this is actually my favorite thing to talk about. And that's because when we talk about productivity, we're actually talking about your productivity as a developer. And that's central to what we do here on the Visual Studio team, is we make tools to make sure that you're as productive as possible. I think the best way to demonstrate what we're talking about and what we're actually going to show today is to dive right into the agenda. So let's take a look there right now.
Yeah, let's go over the agenda. So first off, Cody will go over the latest code fixes and refactorings available on Mac and Windows. We'll both go through tooling improvements. Next, I will talk about navigation and search, as well as performance improvements in the Test Explorer and live unit testing updates. Then I'll talk about some code quality and code style enforcement across a team using analyzers and editor config. And then we will both give you a sneak peek of what's to come.
I'm super excited about the sneak peek portion. I have some pretty cool things to show off on Mac, and I believe Mika has some cool things to show off on Windows. And that's always one of our favorite parts, is just to kind of give that idea of what's to come. When we started doing this presentation, we wanted to make sure that we used an application that you can use to teach your kids programming. So we made a quick little game. We might all be home with our kids right now, and so being able to teach your kids programming while at the same time having fun seemed like a good thing to do. So, Mika, do you want to take us through the application?
So here is a open source repo where you can go ahead and clone it down, and then you can follow along with all of the new features we're about to demo. And let me quickly show you how this game works. So this is my laser memory game. And hopefully you're pretty familiar with a memory game. So you just have to get two matches. Oh,
What is that?
oh no.
Oh, that's
Is that
Fox
not
and
it?
Tiger. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
What did that
Okay,
fox
there we
say?
go. And yeah, so as Cody mentioned, you can play along with your kids and they will totally beat you because I know my memory isn't as good as it used to be. And yeah, and then you can walk your kids through the code and, give them an impromptu coding lesson.
Some edutainment. Trick the kids
As
into
like,
learning.
yeah,
Yes, exactly. So perfect. I think that, as Mika said, we want to dive right into some of the improvements that we have in VS for Mac. And again, we're going to be using this application throughout the presentation. So let's get started on VS for Mac right now. Now, one of the things we've been focusing on over the past year is the core experience within the IDE. And nothing is more core to the experience than the code editor. Well, last summer we replaced the code editor in Visual Studio for Mac with the exact same editor in Visual Studio on Windows. Now what this means is that you get all the features that you're used to on Windows, but now on a Mac. Not only do you have all these great new features, but you also get a nice native experience because we built a Cocoa UI, which is the native macOS UI, on top of the shared editor. So you get all the refactorings and all of the features like multi-caret editing and native input support that you're used to on Windows, but now on Mac with a Cocoa UI. This greatly improves not only the reliability of the editor, but also the performance and feature set. So I want to talk specifically about the refactorings. One of the things we hear a lot from developers is that what makes an IDE is this ability to help you write better code faster. And one of the ways in which it does this is by offering quick fixes and refactorings so that you can always stay up to date on the latest code technologies and write more accurate, more reliable code. So we're going to get started by looking at the application that we demonstrated a few moments ago. To get started, I'm going to open up the Animal Card page, which is located under Models, Animal Card. Now, the first thing that I want to do here is to show the convert to switch expression code fix. I'm going to navigate down to this switch expression here, and as part of a C# 8 update, we can now convert this to a switch expression. So I'm going to click on the light bulb here and say convert switch statement to expression. Perfect. Now, as I scroll back down, it's all fixed up. I'm going to Command Z. Another way that you can access quick fixes in Visual Studio for Mac is by right-clicking and selecting Quick Fix. Again, we have the option to convert switch statement to expression. Perfect. Updated and good to go. Next, let's open up memorygamemodel.cs and see if there's any fixes we can apply there. First, we'll scroll down to line 50, where there's this long call chain. Now, we can see that the call chain goes beyond the readable part of the screen, and so we want to fix that. To do so, you can right-click within the call chain, select Quick Fix, and select Wrap Long Call Chain. Now, the code is a lot more readable than it was. Scrolling back up, we see that we have two items to fix here at line 31. First, let's wrap this call chain again to make it more readable. By selecting wrapping align expression, we're able to have much more readable code. Finally, let's click inside the index operator here and say Quick Fix. Finally, by saying Use Index Operator, we're using the latest features available in C#8. With those three quick fixes, we now have a much more maintainable, readable code. Not only can quick fixes help you with the formatting of your code, they can also help you create methods and functions. So let's move back to animalcard.cs and select the aux card. So right-clicking within aux card and selecting Quick Fix gives me a list of two options. I can either extract a method or extract a local function. I'm going to go ahead and do the local function. Once created, I can now rename this method to anything that I want it to be. Perfect. I have the aux function created, and we're ready to go. Now let's take a look at some string interpolations. Let's go into the test project and open memorygamemodeltest.cs. Here, let's scroll down to the very bottom, and we can see there's this very long string that we might want to manipulate. Let's click within it, and let's use the light bulb over here at the margin this time. Click the light bulb and select Convert to Verbatim String. Once it's converted, you can also convert it back to a regular string through Convert to Regular String. Let's see that again. Click inside the light bulb, select Convert to Verbatim String, and there we go. Let's take a break from looking at quick fixes and now look at some features of the new editor. I'm going to go back into animalcard.cs, and you can see we have a bunch of different emojis here. We have a dog, a wolf, a cow, a fox, and so on. Now, if I wanted to change one of these, I could easily do it by copying and pasting from an emoji dictionary or some such, but what if I want to just type one in directly? Well, because the new editor uses the native input methods of macOS, we get all the native input supports, and that includes the emoji keyboard. So I don't think this looks much like a mouse to me, so I'm going to click here, and I'm going to do Control Command Space, and here we go. Get the emoji keyboard. I'm going to select mouse, and I think this looks more like a mouse than that, which looks a lot like a hamster. All right, now the mouse card is a mouse, and I think everything's good to go. As fun as emoji keyboards can be, there's also other reasons why you may want native input support in your editor. To demonstrate this, I'm going to pretend that I'm going to translate this game into German. I'm going to leave a note for one of my developers to make the translation. So I'm going to add a comment and say, lion is Löwe. As you can see, by long pressing on the O on the keyboard, I'm given the option to add an accented character. Let's do that again. So L, long press on the O, select 2, and then W-E, Löwe for lion. Not only can I type in accented characters, but I can also type in completely different character sets. This includes support for bidirectional and right-to-left languages. To demonstrate this, I've set my keyboard to be Hebrew, and I'm going to type in Shalom. There we go. I was able to type in a right-to-left language within the editor. As you can see, it detected this was a right-to-left language and positioned the comment bar accordingly. Of course, we'd expect it to be on the right side, as that is the start of the comments in a right-to-left language. Now let's talk about multi-caret editing. Multi-caret editing allows you to edit multiple lines at the same time. To demonstrate this, I'm going to add an exclamation point for each of the animal cards. Now, I could click inside each one and add an exclamation point, Or I can do it all at the same time by using Control Option and clicking where I'd like the carets to be. And as you can see, you now have several insertion points, including one master insertion point, which is red. Now, if I click Shift exclamation point, I have the character entered as many times as I need it to be. Again, this is another huge time saver and can really come in handy when you need to edit multiple lines at the same time. Now that was still somewhat time consuming. What if I wanted to automatically create insertion points next to matching characters? To do this, I'm going to set my caret next to the puppy, type Option Shift period on my keyboard, and as I do this, an insertion point is created at each matching string. Once I have all my insertion points, I can arrow over to the beginning of the selected area and add exclamation points next to each of my characters. Finally, what if I wanted to automatically create an insertion point after matching string characters? To do so, I'm going to put my caret next to the puppy, hit Option Shift semicolon, and now there will be an insertion point created at each matching string. I can now arrow over, delete these exclamation points, and continue with the application. Now let's talk about IntelliSense. Over the past year, not only have we focused on improving the overall reliability and performance of IntelliSense, but we've also focused on adding new scenarios and new features. For example, you can now use IntelliSense within regular expressions, and you can enable a feature which allows you to show unimported types within your IntelliSense completion list. Let's take a look at both of those features now. Now let's say I want to add a JSON converter to this application. Unfortunately, I can never quite remember the exact syntax to use, so it can be kind of time-consuming to remember exactly the correct call. Luckily, there's a feature called Show Import Items. It allows me to show completions for unimported types. To enable this, go to Visual Studio, Preferences, navigate to the IntelliSense section, check Show Import Items, click OK, and now, as I begin to type, you can see that NewtonSoft.json, System.text.json, and serialization, all of these libraries are now included in my completion list. By double-clicking on JSON Converter, you can see that using System.text.json and serialization has been added to the header of my file. You may have noticed, as I was typing, that there were a new series of icons at the bottom of the completion list. Let's check those out. So I'm going to type in JSON again, and now we can see that there's this new icon series at the bottom of the list. These correspond to the types within the completion list. For example, classes, structures, and enums. By clicking on one of these, I limit the completion list to just those types. So here are only enums, and here we see only classes. I can also limit this list by using a hotkey. In this case, Option C for classes, and Option E for enums. Through IntelliSense type filtering, I'm able to take advantage of the extra completions provided through unimported types, while at the same time maintaining the readability and usability of my completion list. Regular expressions are a very powerful and versatile tool for every developer. However, I always have a hard time remembering the exact syntax, so I sometimes have to rely upon IntelliSense to lend me a hand. Let's take an example here where I have a new regex call. By hitting Control Space within quotation marks, you're provided a completion list full of regular expression patterns. For example, let's say that I want to match a conditional. By double-clicking on this pattern, it's added to my code. Try that again. Control Space pulls up the list. Let's say I want to do a character class subtraction. Now that pattern's added. Finally, if you hover over a pattern, you're now provided a tooltip which describes what that pattern matches. For example, this would match the bell character, and here you would match a tab character. Now let's take a look at using XML comment styling within my application. So here we have an XML comment block. I hover over the class that it is documenting, we see that Animal Card not only has bulleted lists and numbered lists, but also has clickable links. And now let's go to a class which inherits from Animal Card. Let's open up Dog Card. We see that Dog Card has a comment which is noting that it's going to inherit the documentation from its parent. So by hovering over Dog Card, we see that it includes Animal Card's XML comment styling. Now let's take a look at the new NuGet package manager in Visual Studio for Mac. By right-clicking on the solution and saying Manage NuGet Packages, I can now manage NuGet packages for each of my projects in a single location. For example, if I wanted to install Microsoft Extensions.logging in only one of my projects, click on it, select Add Package, and now given the option to add it to just one or multiple projects within my solution. The same goes for removing existing packages. Again, click on the package and then select Uninstall. I'm given the option to remove the package from any of the valid projects within my solution. Finally, I can also do updates from this location as well. By having the ability to manage NuGet packages from a central location for every project in your solution, the whole task of managing NuGet packages is now far more efficient than it once was. Finally, I'd like to take a look at the new terminal integrated within Visual Studio for Mac. To access it, either click the terminal button down in the status area or use the View Pads terminal view. Now to make this easy to see, I'm going to dock the terminal. And here we see that the terminal is now front and center to my project. The important thing about this terminal is that it's not just scoped to my project, or it's not scoped to specific .NET commands. This is the full macOS terminal integrated within Visual Studio for Mac. So I get all the ZSH commands that I would expect. I can switch to Bash if I wanted to. I can switch back to ZSH. This is a great way to interact with tools, utilities on my system, and also interact with the files on my system while staying within the context of my project. For example, a good way to demonstrate this is by using Git within the terminal within VS for Mac. So we made some changes to this project to turn the hamster into a mouse, and I want to make sure that those changes are pushed up to the cloud for Mika to pull down and work on. So let's take a look at the status. Yep, exactly. So Animal Card and Mouse Card are both updated, so we should make a commit and push these up. Git commit fixed. Fixes the hamster situation. All right, and now let's do git push. And there we go. All within Visual Studio for Mac, I was able to use the CLI to access Git, commit my changes, and push it up to the cloud. Mika, I believe you mentioned that you can run these Git commands in the Git terminal window within Visual Studio on Windows as well, correct?
That's right. Just like Cody, I can use all my Git commands in the new Visual Studio terminal. I can open the terminal by using the keyboard shortcut Control Backtick, which is the same shortcut used to open the terminal in VS Code. We're all about that consistency. And so launching the terminal automatically opens an integrated developer PowerShell instance where I can use my different Git commands. So you no longer need to switch between two different windows. We will provide that terminal window within Visual Studio. And you can also customize this to use whatever terminal you want. Speaking of Git commands, we have the brand new Git window. The Git window allows you to check out into a different branch. I can also create a new branch. I can view my changes and click on them to see the diff view in my editor. And when I'm done with all my changes, I can add a commit message and commit my code and push it. Or I can commit and push my code all in one go. I also have the option to initialize my Git repo from the Git window or the Git menu by selecting Push to Git Service. This option is currently grayed out because I already initialized this repo. And I want to point out that the reason why we created the skit window is because Team Explorer, well, let's just say it had a lot going on and it made it pretty complex. So we wanted to streamline all of the skit functionality by bringing it into its own Git menu and Git window. And so I'm going to go ahead and check out into my dev branch. And here I have a test project that I started, and I want to create a reference to it. So instead of having to right click and add a project reference, I can now easily drag the project that I would like to reference. And voila, notice how the project reference was added to my CS proj file, and it was added underneath my dependencies node within the Solution Explorer. We also added the capability to copy, paste, and drag files from the File Explorer to the Solution Explorer. So instead of having to right-click and add an existing item and re-navigate to where my path already is, I can now drag a file from the File Explorer to the Solution Explorer. And notice how the file got copied to my source. Another exciting feature in the Solution Explorer is the nested files view. So let's say I want to create an internal class in my animal card class, and I'm going to call it, let's say, animal helper. And I want to go ahead and move this into its own file. And maybe I want to, refactor this a bit and move this method into my animal helper class. So I have an error here. If I hover over that, my light bulb's letting me know that I need to add my missing using directive. And so now I can control how files nest under each other with file nesting. So if I go ahead and select this file nesting option within the Solution Explorer, and I navigate to my animal card file, you can see that the animal helper class belongs to my animal card class. And with file nesting, it makes it clear. And speaking of navigating and organizing code, Control Q, which is the main search in Visual Studio, now has code search. So I can now search for different types and files. I can use this code filter to only show me the code results. What's really cool is, let's say I want to search for my memory game model, but I don't want to type all of that out. I can type the camel case characters, and Control Q will still index those results for me. Pretty sweet. Control Q also allows you to search for different options in Tools Options. So if I want, I can go to my environment settings from here. Control Q also allows you to do different actions. So if I want, I can run my, let's say, my tests from here, and there will be different shortcuts next to it, which is super helpful. So think of this as your catch-all search box, and it's only going to get better. Another navigation tip I have is go to base. Go to base allows you to easily navigate the inheritance chain. Go to base is available on the right-click context menu, or you can use the keyboard shortcut Alt-Home. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And if there's more than one result, a window will open where you can go ahead and hop to that result. Find in Files was completely rewritten. So Find in Files now runs twice as fast for general searches and 10 times faster for regex searches. Let's see how fast this really is. And wow, that was really fast. And speaking of performance, we added some major performance improvements to the Test Explorer. We added performance improvements to test discovery and execution, especially in large solutions with lots of tests. So we encourage you to run your own benchmarks to evaluate how valuable this is. We tested this on the Roslyn codebase, which is the C# and Visual Basic compiler. The Test Explorer reduced memory consumption from 50 to 60%, and it cut its load time by up to 60%. The Test Explorer also caches last test results from the last test run. So after you close Visual Studio and when you reopen it, you'll see former test results, which you can see here. We will also do rediscovery in the background in case you ran builds or added more code, which you can see here. So these are all my tests that I haven't run yet. And in case you missed it, Test Explorer did get a new UI. Thanks for noticing. We have these new columns that you can now drag and drop. We have these filter buttons, so I can filter down to only see my tests that I haven't run yet or my fail tests. Group by is fully customizable, so I can now group this by, let's say, state and class. So now I can see all of my past tests, which is the state, and then the classes underneath that. Also, live unit testing got its own window. So you can now see what tests are included in live unit testing. I will go ahead and open that. And live unit testing is an enterprise-only feature that will run tests in the background as you type and show results right in the editor alongside your code. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on live unit testing. And I have a few tests here that are testing the serialization of my Unicode. And because in this app I'm serializing Unicode and it can be really tricky to serialize Unicode, I want to make sure I'm serializing it correctly. So I'm going to scroll down to where I'm writing these tests, and here is the first test I have for serialization, and this is testing my dog heart to JSON and back. I notice I have a couple of these regular string literals over here. It's kind of hard for me to parse what this is saying, but luckily we have a new refactoring where I can convert between a regular string literal and a verbatim string literal. Pretty sweet. And if I want, I can go ahead and convert that back to a regular string literal. And if we scroll down over here, I have a more universal test that can test every card to make sure they're all being serialized correctly. So this is a theory test, and with a theory, I can reuse test logic without having a bunch of duplicate tests. And in this theory is the data that I'm going to pass to my test method, and each of these are going to show up as its own separate tests in the Test Explorer window and in the live unit testing window. And so now I want to add and assert that my JSON string contains the Unicode to the animal. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I want to point out this subtle change we made to the IntelliSense argument completion list. The IntelliSense list will now open when you type an open parenthesis. Before, it would open when you would type the first character. And if you don't love that behavior, you can also escape out of it. So if I want, I can just press the escape key and the IntelliSense window will close. So yeah, we would love to get your feedback on that. It's in the preview channel. And there we go. So there's my assert. So it looks like I have an error here. So if I go ahead and press this glyph and I hover over this error and I read the error message, I can see that this is actually expecting a Unicode code instead of the emoji character. So I will go ahead and serialize my card to Unicode code. I'll pass in my card type. Sweet. Hopefully that will pass. And let me actually pass in Unicode code. Awesome. All right, cool. So now that this is passing and serializing correctly, I want to deserialize this. So I will go ahead and take the JSON string and convert it back to its original type. All right, so here I'm actually getting an error, so I want to see why that is. So if I hover over this error, I can see that this cannot be implicitly cast. So I actually have a code fix where I can add an explicit cast. So this will now grab the type that the call is expecting, so I don't have to hover over to learn what that type was declared as, and this will just go ahead and serve it right out for me, and now the error is gone. Now I want to verify that the object has the same animal string as it was created with. And there's my IntelliCode giving me starred suggestions based on the current context of my code, just making my code that much smarter using machine learning. Awesome, so hopefully these will pass. And they do, sweet. So as you can see, live unit testing is a powerful tool which helps me iteratively build tests. Next, I want to talk about analyzers. So at explicit cast and all the code fixes and refactorings that Cody demoed earlier, those are all powered by analyzers. And analyzers analyze your code and reports diagnostics and errors as you type. So this typically manifests in the editor as squiggles. So if you're in Visual Studio and you see squiggles, those are analyzers running in the background. And if we take a look at my error list, which I can open by selecting this warning here, this is my health indicator showing me a sneak peek of my errors and warnings without having to have the error list open, allowing me to save as much real estate as possible for my editor, which is pretty sweet. So if I go ahead and select my health indicator, I can open my error list, and you can see here that I have all these different analyzers running. And analyzers also come with severities. There are 3 shown here. There's the error severity, the warning severity, and the information severity. There's also a 4th severity called hidden or silent, but since it is set to hidden, it will not show up in my error list. So first, I want to start with a warning that says my conditional expression can be simplified. And so I can easily navigate to this warning using my error list. And I see here I have a pretty complicated ternary condition. Ternary conditions are great, but sometimes at the end of editing some logic, you realize things could be a lot simpler. And at the end of the day, we want our code to be easily read and consumed. So this analyzer is basically teaching me where I can improve the quality of my code. And so notice this light bulb that I have here. And so this is where fixers come along. So if I select this light bulb and use the quick actions menu, I get a one-click code fix to simplify my conditional expression. And that is so much better. So that's just one analyzer helping me improve the quality of my code. If I take a look at my error list again, you will notice that I have a suggestion here. And so if I hop to that suggestion, you'll notice these 3 dots. And if I accept the code fix for this, it's telling me to use an index operator. And so this here is an indice, also known as an index operator, which is a C#8 language feature. And this is saying the last item of the list. So that is equivalent to writing this. And I like that because that is a lot shorter, it's more concise, and saves me a lot of time. So this analyzer is teaching me new C# language features and suggesting how I can use them where I can. So I really like this suggestion, so I'm going to go ahead and configure the severity of this and promote it from a suggestion to a warning. So now there's a green squiggle making it a bit more obvious, and my error list now shows a warning. This will also update my editor config. And so if I go on over to my editor config file, you can see that I can search for the index, and there you can see that the severity has been updated to a warning instead of a suggestion. And for those of you that aren't familiar with editor config, an editor config is a single file that documents all of your code style or code quality options that lives at the root of your repository, can be managed by your regular source controls, and shared across your entire team. So think of this as a universal way of enforcing code style or code quality preferences across your team. And while I'm in my editor config, I want to point out that we added file header support. This allows me to add file headers to existing files within my project or solution using an editor config. I will first need to set the value to equal the header text I would like applied, which I already did over here. And I can then place my cursor on the first line of a given C# or Visual Basic file, and then I can accept the Add File banner. I can apply this to my document, my project, or solution. If I select project or solution, I will be able to see a preview of the changes before I apply them. Once I hit apply, you will notice that the file header was added to all my C# files within my project. Pretty sweet. So you may notice that I also have these grayed out using directives over here. And so I can either select the light bulb to remove these unnecessary usings and select project or solution to remove them across my entire project or solution. Or I can use our one-click code cleanup, which is represented by this itty bitty icon. I will first need to configure code cleanup and promote the appropriate fixtures that I would like to get applied, which I have here. I can then run code cleanup by selecting the broom icon, or I can type Control-KE, which is the keyboard shortcut, and there you go. You can also run code cleanup across your entire project or solution. You will need to right-click on the project or solution name within the Solution Explorer, and then you can select Analyze and Code Cleanup, and then you can select Run Code Cleanup. So now those using directives are removed across my entire project. Pretty sweet. And so these were just some examples of how you can enforce code style and code quality preferences across your team using analyzers, code cleanup, editor config, and the quick actions light bulb menu. So with the time we have left, Cody and I would like to show you some features that are coming soon. So keep an eye out on that Visual Studio preview channel. Cody, you mentioned that you have some preview features that you want to show in VS for Mac.
Yeah, I'd love to. Let's dive right in. Earlier in the presentation, I demonstrated how to use quick fixes to quickly apply updates and refactorings to your code. We wanted to reimagine the way you interact with the system in a way that is more efficient and brings all the different fixes front and center. So let's see how that looks. I'm going to right-click within the code and say Quick Actions and Refactorings. This now gives me a single window with a diff view, the ability to scope fixes, and a list of all the different quick fixes and refactorings that I can apply to the code. I know the first thing I want to do is wrap and align the expression, so I'm going to type in wrap, and I'm going to click wrap and align expression. Perfect. Now, we also wanted to make this easy to access via your keyboard, because your keyboard is the primary way in which you interact with the editor. I'm going to do the keyboard command of Option Enter, and that's going to bring up the same window. Now I can either search for what I need, or I can navigate by using the arrow keys. I know I want to use the index operator, so I'm going to type in index, select enter. There we go. Now this is an early preview, and we are continuing to iterate on the design and the implementation, but we hope to have it in the preview channel soon. All right, so that's the new quick fix feature in VS for Mac. Mika, I think there are some features that you wanted to show in Windows as well, right?
Yeah, let me show you those. Yeah, so switching over to Windows, here is a sneak peek on the latest productivity features. First, we have a nice little quality of life improvement. Some of you may use pinning properties when you're in debugger mode to show the property you want for a certain type. There is now a simple quick action to pin properties programmatically in your code. So here I can add a debugger display attribute to the top of my class, and that will go ahead and add this method to the bottom. And its default return will be toString, but I want to go ahead and return my animal property. So I'm going to update that. And now I'm going to go ahead and run my debugger. So I'm going to set a breakpoint here in my test. I'm going to debug this. All right, so now this is being run. I don't know, what's this? Let me refresh that. Okay, cool. And so in my debugger, you will notice that the card shows the actual value of what the animal property is. And so adding the debugger display attribute changed the display to show a property value as opposed to the type. And let's say I want to verify that the dog emoji was written when I deserialized this JSON. Instead of having to expand and scroll through and search for that, even though it's anyways at the top, I can search for it. So I can use our emoji keyboard, which is the Windows period key, and I can scroll down to look for my dog emoji. There it is. And then I can go ahead and search for it. Pretty sweet. So instead of using the pinnable properties UI in the debugger, I can do this in my code programmatically. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my debugger to show you the next feature. And so next up, we added IntelliSense inside datetime and time span literal strings. In this piece of code, I'm taking datetime and I'm calling toString on it. If I place my cursor inside the string literal and press Control Space, I get completion options and an explanation as to what each character means. And we give you both what the datetime literal is and an explanation of what it will be. We already do this for regex, just like Cody demoed earlier, but I can go ahead and show you how that works on Windows. So if I place my cursor in the regex string and press Control Space, you will notice basic regex completions and an explanation as to what each characters mean. So we provide this nice inline experience instead of having to go to the browser to learn how all of this works. And we've had change signature for a long time where you can reorder and remove parameters, but we recently added the capability to add a parameter. I can select this add option. I can add a type name, and I can give it a parameter name. I can make it required or optional. If it's optional, I can add a default value. I can decide what I want to inject at the call site. So if I put in some value and I can say to use some named argument, for example, if I'm using a constant and we'll want it to be named, I can introduce a to-do variable, which basically puts a to-do in my code so I can visit those errors and go through each call site independently and decide what needs to be passed. And for optional parameters, I can choose to omit the call site completely. And once I add that, you will see that it gets added here at the top. And I also get a preview of the new signature. Pretty sweet. And here I'm using root components. And let's say I want to peek at other Blazor repositories on GitHub to see what other services people use for their Blazor apps. I can go ahead and do a find all references search on root components. I'll go ahead and expand that a bit so I can see my results. And notice how these results say external. If I click on those results, I can navigate to repositories online that aren't on my local machine. I can confirm that this is not a part of my solution at all by hovering over the file name where I can see that this .cs file is in my cache, my app data local. So I can explore APIs and navigate and view files that are part of a remote repository without having to leave Visual Studio. This is called cross-repo navigation, which will be available in 16.7 Preview 1 as an extension called Visual Studio Rich Code Navigation. With the extension, you will be able to use final references from your code to any repos indexed by rich navigation, and we will soon extend these capabilities to include additional navigation actions like go to implementation and go to definition.
Awesome, thank you. Well, that about does it for our presentation today. I hope that you learned some productivity tips and tricks that can help you be a more productive developer. I know that we enjoyed sharing these with you. So if you have any questions, please let us know. And I think that brings us to some resources that might be available, right, Mika?
Yeah, let's jump into some resources. So here are some links. So if you want to download Preview, which I highly encourage, you can do that at this link. And here's the link to our Blazor memory game that Cody and I demoed, the latest code fixes and refactorings. And if you want a long list of all the refactorings added since 2017 Update 8, this is a demo project that shows you how to trigger all those code fixes and refactorings. And here is a roadmap to both Visual Studio for Mac and Visual Studio for Windows. And for those of you that are interested in trying out cross-repo navigation, you can sign up here for a private preview. And as always, feel free to file bugs or talk to us directly if you want to say, hey, go to developer community. And you can also go ahead and do that from Visual Studio for Windows and from Visual Studio for Mac.
Exactly. And we look forward to hearing from you. So please, please drop us a note in the developer community. We're there every day. So we hope to hear from you. And thank you again for joining us. And I hope you have a great day.